What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today's video, we are finally, after almost an entire year. If I'm not mistaken, Black Panther number 22 came out on March 25th, 2020 in the year of our Lord of the Rings. That was the last issue we have gotten in Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther run until today, February 24th, in the year of our Lord of the Rings. And man, this issue came back not so much just with like a bang, but with a statement of intent. We are going to be talking about Black Panther number 23 by Ta-Nehisi Coates and Daniel Acuna and Chris O'Halloran. And in this video, we are going to learn exactly what Killmonger is willing to give up to ensure that he can take over not just Wakanda Prime, but the entire Earth and the intergalactic empire of Wakanda as a whole. And on the other side of things, we're going to learn a little bit more about what Bast has planned for Zenzi and what she desires for the future of Wakanda. And more importantly, we're gonna see T'Challa do something that people have laughably called me racist for doing, but T'Challa is gonna do it in some little way that I find amazing, and I am absolutely here for it. We are gonna talk about all that and more right now, but first, let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple eyes. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
For those of you who do not know what is going on here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over it. I actually did a few videos going back to this. I'll try to link those somewhere up here. You can go back and check out those videos because honestly, it would just be easier to watch that than for me to try and rehash it. Point of the matter is that we remember last time Killmonger was having some issues with the Onondaga symbiote. He wasn't gelling with it, like he wasn't bonding with it in ways that the symbiote would have preferred, because we must remember that the Onondaga who we met in the intergalactic empire Wakanda, he died, but it's almost as though his essence, his desires, his basically everything that he wanted, his ambitions, all bled into the symbiote that he wielded that gave him his power. And these desires, though they align with Killmonger, who the Onondaga symbiote is named for, or technically doesn't really have a name, but he's just referred to as Onondaga because that's who had it. But the point of the matter is that even though their goals align, Killmonger doesn't want to share the power, and that is a problem for the symbiote. The symbiote, because of the nature of how symbiotes work, they want to share. They want to have a symbiosis. There has to be a give and there has to be a take. We see this all the time in regards of symbiotes with Eddie Brock. We see this with Cletus Cassidy and his Carnage symbiote. We've seen all of this in the past. This is old hat by this point. We should all know this. But the thing I feel is going to go understated is just how much the symbiote is attacking Killmonger's body in front of the rest of the empire, making Killmonger look weak, and that's something Killmonger can't stand for. He knows and recognizes that all of this walks a razor's edge. They can defeat T'Challa and the Wakanda Prime forces. However, they're going to need to work together, and even working together isn't even exactly enough. They're going to have to be on the same page of one mind and one body. And this is something that Onondaga himself does not believe because, of course, being a symbiote, he kind of is in Killmonger's head. So it's not like he doesn't know that, what Killmonger actually wants. But the thing is, Killmonger is willing to give it up if it means sharing the power. Even if Killmonger doesn't get to have all the glory to himself, he is now more than willing to give up the whole I and me for we and us. See, pronouns are important. That said, the Onondaga symbiote has something that they are going to bring to bear, and we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. Other thing I want to talk about is the character of Bast. You see, Bast has been a little jilted lately because we got to kind of go back and look at some of the past of what's gone on with the intergalactic empire of Wakanda and even Wakanda Prime as a whole. The Orisha had abandoned Wakanda. The gods had fled Wakanda and left them in their hour of need when they needed them the most. More specifically, when the originators, these beings who originally held Wakanda in their grasp and lived in Wakanda until it was usurped from them. And for those who don't know, there were these mythical entities. There were these serpent-like creatures known as the Symbi, other creatures that were more gorilla-ish and ape-like, known as the Vanyan. There were also the arachnoid-like Anansi, and then we also had the insectoid race, which was known as the Creeping Doom. They originally settled Wakanda. It was their home. But when humanity tried to settle Wakanda, the originators tried to beat them back. But it was about roughly at this moment that the Orisha arrived and was born from the hopes and prayers of humanity and what was essentially the early Wakandans that we think of today. This is where in the Marvel Comics universe, we got the gods Bast, Thoth, Ptah, Koko, and Mujaji. And when the humans defeated these originators, they banished them and locked them away. I bring all this up because it's going to come up later, because you see, the Orisha, they had protected Wakanda for centuries, and then all of a sudden, when the intergalactic empire of Wakanda became a thing, thanks to T'Challa sending those spacefaring Wakandans during Secret Wars out into the far reaches of space, when they were lost, it essentially went through a time warp. They settled those outlying planets, and thus the intergalactic empire of Wakanda was born. Well, the Orisha saw power beyond the stars, and they abandoned Wakanda Prime, and next thing you know, there are no gods to help protect Wakanda when the originators returned. So it wouldn't surprise you exactly when you discover that T'Challa wasn't really all that high on the Orisha since they abandoned them, and they literally had to rely on their own grit and grind to save their own nation. And then, of course, T'Challa, recognizing how Bast had become lazy and petulant, even to the point where Bast has taken over the body of N'Jadaka's own daughter from the intergalactic empire of Wakanda, we see that, yeah, T'Challa just wasn't very high on Bast, and Bast left. Well, now that Bast has taken over Zinzi, which now it kind of seems as though the bond between Zinzi and Bast has grown to the point where now, as Bast tells us, it's the last time that they will be talking to each other this way. At first, I thought that maybe Bast was going to go on her own way. But what's actually happening here is that Bast is going to take over Zinzi's body. At least that's what it seems is going on here. She's going to take over Zinzi's body, and Zinzi will become Bast's new avatar. Though later this isn't exactly translated, but this is exactly what's being implied, because Zinzi goes on to talk about how she's committed great atrocities and had great atrocities committed to herself, and that she feels nothing but her craving for vengeance, and she feels like it would be nice to feel something other than a craving for vengeance, even if she's not the one doing the feeling. And that basically implies Zinzi is going to be taken over by Bast, which would be a really interesting move for Bast, considering what Zinzi's powers are. Zinzi can basically bring out the absolute worst in humanity. Her powers allow her to manipulate the feelings and emotions of others. She can literally drive people to do whatever she wants. She's almost like the Purple Man in that regard, only she doesn't have to say anything. She can literally just manipulate your feelings from a few feet away without having to say anything. Now, what does Bast have planned beyond that? Hard to say, but what we do know is that right now, Wakanda is mourning the loss of one of their fallen, and that is Nakia. Now, don't get this confused. This is not the Nakia from the movies. This is also not the Nakia, aka Malice, from earlier in the comics. This is the Nakia of the intergalactic empire of Wakanda. She sacrificed herself in attacking N'Jadaka's fleet of intergalactic ships, with her ship being destroyed in the last issue, and her dying with it. And right now, T'Challa, as he does state in this comic, that right now it's not time to mourn, that you should fight first and grieve later. This is something he was always taught, but he never particularly cared for this way of thinking, and that right now they're gonna take the time to mourn the loss of one of their greatest fallen. And some would say, well, why is T'Challa propping up Nakia, who, yeah, she was a major part of the rebellion, but it's not like Storm died or anything. I know that's what a lot of readers are probably gonna say, but the reason why he's doing this is because Nakia meant a lot to him. You have to remember that when he was in the intergalactic empire of Wakanda, they fell in love with each other. They were together, and up until the point that T'Challa got his memories back, and then once he got his memories back, he was like, okay, wait, I have a love back home. I'm with Storm. I can't be with you. This is not what this is. And you know, even though maybe I do love you, I don't love you like that anymore. That was technically somebody else. But T'Challa has had a statue built of Nakia to honor the loss of her to Wakanda. And not only that, but he has called in everybody. Now, originally, we already knew that characters like the former Wrecking Crew member Thunderball, Braxis, we knew that Zawavari and Achibi and all these other characters had come in and joined in with Wakanda. We knew about Casper Cole coming through and helping out. We knew about, was it Asha, who some may or may not remember, but Asha came back to help. We also knew other characters like Luke Cage, Falcon, Monica Rambeau, so on and so forth. A lot of these characters had been hanging around and wanted to help T'Challa fight back against the oncoming threat of N'Jadaka and Killmonger. Well, it just so happens not only have they pulled up, but we also see that at the memorial for Nakia, we see characters like Nick Fury, Night Thrasher, Miles Morales, Misty Knight, Prodigy, Patriot, Ironheart, who some may forget Ironheart had been spending a lot of time in Wakanda lately thanks to her palling up with Shuri. We also see Cloak from Cloak and Dagger. We see Brother Voodoo. We see Rage. We see War Machine. We even see Frenzy. Some might even miss that we saw Frenzy over there. All that aside, going back to Nakia, the reason why he's propping her up is because Nakia is not a native Wakandan. She is from the Wakanda from beyond the stars, the intergalactic empire. And Wakanda has always kind of had a very xenophobic stance. It's something that I think a lot of people don't like to talk about in regards to Wakanda. It's something that is easy to forget in the MCU because within the first Black Panther movie, by the time you get to the end of it, T'Challa has dissolved the whole xenophobic stance of Wakanda. But in the comics, that's something that's been a thing for a long time. They're not overly fond of outsiders and strangers, and even more to the point, they're not even crazy about mutants, and they had one for a queen. So that should tell you something about how Wakanda feels about outsiders. They still treated Storm as though she was less than, even though she was their queen, and even became one of their Orisha. But T'Challa is using this because he wants to show them that even though Nakia came from someplace far away, she grew up in a world where she saw a tainted version of Wakanda. She grew up in privilege. She wasn't a slave the way T'Challa was when he went to the Empire. She lived in riches and in comfort, yet she heard stories of what the real Wakanda was like, and instead of taking on that comfort, instead of resting on her laurels, she accepted that her nation was flawed, and she decided to fight for something that was better. And if Nakia can do this, then anyone who is willing to stand up and fight for Wakanda to save it and protect what is precious about it, then they are welcome in Wakanda. And if she was willing to give her life for Wakanda that was not even hers, what are the people of Wakanda going to give? What are the people who are answering the beacon for Wakanda are going to give? How far is everyone willing to go to make this happen? And this is one of those situations where I know a lot of people, when I was doing my all black this, all black that videos, a lot of white people would get upset, like, oh, this is not even white people. A lot of people who were not black would get really upset about this, and they were like, oh, well, this is racist. This is racist. Oh, there's not an all white team. Meanwhile, we had a whole ass Squadron Supreme that was nothing but white people up until recently. The Avengers used to be all white. There used to not be any black X-Men. Hell, there used to not be any X-Men back in the day that were any color other than white. It took them some years to make that a thing. People like to forget that once upon a time, yeah, comics used to be incredibly white, but suddenly when an all-black team comes along, oh, now there's a problem with there being only one color on a team. But that said, what T'Challa has done is he has brought together an elite fighting force of some of the most badass black characters in the Marvel Comics universe, some of which some of you may not even be aware existed. But I love the fact that he has brought them together, and they are right now willing to fight for Wakanda, regardless of their citizenship. Think about it. We have whole ass Krakoans on that island right now willing to lay down their lives for a better Wakanda. Now, the reason why things are going to get a little weird here is because what the N'Jadaka symbiote is planning is that he's planning to call in the Orisha. You see, the Orisha who originally abandoned Wakanda for the intergalactic empire, N'Jadaka had basically brought them under his thrall. When he stole the power of Bast, the Orisha followed him, and they do his bidding now. They work for him now, more or less, as much as gods can work for a mortal man or a mortal alien symbiote thing. Point of the matter is that he has called in his marker and they are coming to Wakanda, though the Wakandans are wise to be worried that the Orisha would show up now all of a sudden after all that's happened, and they're right to. They do not work for T'Challa. They are not coming to protect Wakanda. They are fighting for the intergalactic empire. And it just so happens that right now at this particular point in time, while T'Challa and company, while they're getting ready to do battle with the Orisha, because Bast has returned and Bast is here to kind of rub T'Challa's nose in what's going on here. She basically says that she came to deliver a simple message, that she's not here to betray T'Challa, but that she's saving the best for last, which I don't know what's going on here. Bast is playing a very dangerous game right here, and I'm not sure what she's up to. I don't know. Bast has never been more tricksy than she is right now at this particular point in time, and it's hard to say what exactly is going on here. But whether or not she's actually betraying T'Challa, whether or not she's actually going to help T'Challa, or if she's just on her own side and nobody else's, that could also be a thing. But the thing that Bast isn't counting on is that Queen Ramonda has snuck off to the underground area beneath Lake Nyanza. This is actually the area where T'Challa had the originators when they resurfaced back roughly around the time of Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther number 13 that came out back in 2017. And the story kind of bled on down up towards the end of his main run on Black Panther before all the intergalactic empire Wakanda stuff started. She has gone to where T'Challa has banished the originators, and she is going to cut a deal with them, though they honestly have no interest in anything she has to say. They're obviously jilted, they're upset, they hate that their land has been taken from them, and they are bitter towards the human Wakandans for basically pillaging what was essentially their home. And this right here is a very strong commentary, not just on, and I know some people aren't going to want to hear it, but it is what it is. This is a commentary on what it is like to colonize other people, because you got to think about it. This is something that Ta-Nehisi Coates has done with this run, basically proving that sometimes those who have been persecuted against become the persecutors. How those who came from Wakanda Prime went to another far-off galaxy, went off to the far reaches of space, and over time, they forgot their way, they lost their way, and they became colonizers. And then also dipping back into the history of Wakanda itself and learning that the early Wakandans, or rather the human ones, they were colonizers in and of themselves. They took this land. This was not originally theirs, and they stole it from the indigenous life that was there. Ramonda, and I love the line here, I'm gonna read this verbatim. I love what Ramonda says here when one of the originators tells her that there's nothing you can offer us that's gonna make things right. She says that I come not in service of mockery, originator, but reparation. We cannot heal what was done. We cannot return to you what was taken, what was pillaged, but we also need not act as though that plunder did not happen, nor pretend that our beloved Wakanda is without stain. It has taken time to see ourselves fully, to understand our faults, to accept, to remember. And so I say unto you, originator, the indigenous of Wakanda, child of the plunder, child of the slave, that Ramonda of Bernanzana comes not as a conqueror, but as a healer. And I love this line because, yeah, it's a statement of intent from the Queen Mother Ramonda. She is telling them, and this is honestly a commentary, and you could think of any nation, real or fictitious, that has ever colonized anyone else or has created or done great atrocities against another people. You could even say this is a commentary on America itself when she talks about the fact that we can't pretend that our nation is without stain. This is kind of a commentary on the fact that people like to pretend that America has never done anything wrong, that we have not created atrocities against other people. We try to whitewash it and hide it and tuck it under the bed, push the mess into the closet, and pretend like it never happened. But the truth is, until we actually take the time to sit down and say, yes, we have done these awful things. Yes, we accept that we used to be terrible people. But at some point, we have to say to ourselves that, yes, we were awful, but now we have changed. We are better. And maybe we can't change the past. Maybe we can't take the pain away, but maybe we could do something to make things better. And that's what Queen Ramonda is offering them. She's telling them right now that there is a threat that is coming, the threat of N'Jadaka and Killmonger, that together they are going to destroy everything. They are going to take the Wakanda that both Queen Ramonda and the originators once called home. They're going to take it and pervert it into something even worse than what either of them could have ever imagined. And even if at the end of the day they fail, the one thing she can offer them that may actually mean something to them is to regain the honor that they felt they lost when they lost their home. So right now, we have a war that is brewing with Onondaga and Killmonger together as one combined entity, as symbiote and human, now seemingly fully bonded with an entire intergalactic empire of Wakanda at their back, as well as all of the Empire's allies ready to bear down on Wakanda Prime. And we also have to take into account that they have the Orisha at their disposal. All the while, we have T'Challa and all of his allies, all of his various friends and foes that have come together to help him in his hour of need. Some of the most powerful characters in all of Marvel Comics coming together to fight to save Wakanda. And somewhere in the middle, Bast and Zinzi are plotting something. And like I said, it wasn't like some action-packed issue, but man, there is so much going on here. And Coates has basically come out of the gate swinging after such a long absence. He didn't bring Black Panther back with a whimper, but he brought it back with a bang and a reverence that I feel like this book has always had and has been missing from Marvel Comics for the last 11 months. Hope I was able to help break some of this down and help you guys better understand why the things that are happening in this comic are happening, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Speaking of, if you like this video, Hulk smash that like button and make sure you share it all over the internet with all your friends so they can know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to Black Panther and the intergalactic empire of Wakanda. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about this issue of Black Panther number 23. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.